If we measured our success, not by the height of our own happiness, but by the depth of our resonance with the feelings of others, how would our world change tomorrow?
Wow, that's a massive question.
Right. I want you to just hold on to that question for a minute. Just let it sit there. Because
Mhm.
usually when we think about success or, even spiritual fulfillment, we picture this solitary, isolated peak.
Oh, absolutely.
You reaching enlightenment, you achieving inner peace, just you blocking out the noise of the world.
Yeah, it's an incredibly individualized metric that we use today. We're taught to look entirely inward to measure our spiritual or emotional health,
Yeah.
almost as if we're closed circuits.
Exactly. But the text we are diving into today completely flips that script. I
Huh.
mean, it suggests that reality at its very core is entirely about resonance.
Right, that a closed circuit is actually a broken circuit.
Yes. Today we are opening up a single, highly profound source document. It's an excerpt from a text called The Restoration of Shimjung and the Eternal Bond of Love. Specifically, we're looking at Prayer 1.
Which is a really fascinating piece of history.
It is. This was delivered by Reverend Sun Myung Moon on the day of True Parents' Blessing.
And just to give you a tiny bit of context on that event within this movement, a blessing ceremony isn't just a simple benediction.
Right. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, it often refers to a mass wedding or a rededication of marriage, which, theologically speaking, represents the grafting of humanity onto a completely new, restored lineage.
Wow.
So this prayer isn't just, a standard Sunday sermon. It's an invocation delivered at what the movement considers a pivotal, world-altering crossroads.
A huge moment. Now, right at the top, I want to be incredibly clear with you. Our goal on this deep dive is not to endorse the theology or, take any sides regarding the religious movement behind it.
Exactly. We're looking at it objectively.
Right. We are treating this document as an intellectual exploration of a sweeping, almost unimaginably vast cosmic worldview. We are mapping the architecture of this belief system because the ideas inside it are just fascinating to untangle, regardless of your personal background.
It provides a highly unique, very specific lens on human suffering and our desperate need for connection and the very nature of the divine.
So our mission today is to unpack the central, really complex concept of this text, which is a Korean concept called Shimjung.
Shimjung, right.
We're going to figure out what exactly it is, how the text claims humanity completely lost it, and the staggering, cosmos-spanning effort required to get it back.
It's quite the journey.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how this worldview says the universe broke, we need to understand how it was supposedly designed to work in the first place.
Yeah, we have to look at the original blueprint. And the foundation of that blueprint, like the mortar holding the bricks of the universe together, is Shimjung.
Okay.
Now, translation is notoriously tricky with a concept this deep, but in the context of this prayer, Shimjung is described as the foundational bond of love that was supposed to govern existence.
So it's not just a fleeting feeling.
No, not at all. It isn't just an emotion. It is the core operating system of reality. The text explicitly outlines three critical relationships that were created within this Shimjung of love.
Which are?
The relationship between God and mankind, the relationship between mankind and creation, and the relationship between God and creation.
Okay, wait. I am trying to visualize this. So it's not just a two-way street between a person and a deity, like a private phone call.
No, it's a triad.
A three-way network.
Exactly. It encompasses everything. The text refers to it as an eternal father and son bond through which Shimjung flows.
Flows. That's an interesting word choice.
Right. Notice the implication of the word flows.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that love, in this original state, wasn't a static, passive feeling you just sat with.
Like a puddle.
Yeah, it was a dynamic, moving current connecting all things. If you were in harmony with God, the text implies you were simultaneously in perfect harmony with the natural world, the creation.
So you couldn't have one without the other. You couldn't be connected to God and disconnected from nature.
Yeah.
I think the best way I can picture this original state of Shimjung is, well, imagine a perfect, zero latency emotional internet.
Oh, I like that.
Or like a cosmic nervous system. You know how if you stub your toe, your brain instantly registers the pain and your hand immediately reaches down to hold it?
Yep, instant feedback.
Right. In this original design, every action, every feeling was supposed to resonate perfectly and instantly across this network between God, humanity, and the universe.
Perfect resonance.
There were no dead zones, no dropped connections. If God felt joy, humanity felt it instantly, and the natural world, bloomed in response.
That concept of a cosmic nervous system captures it beautifully, honestly.
Yeah.
Because there was no latency, no blockage in that flow of Shimjung, the resulting state of being was entirely positive.
Every node in the network was functioning perfectly.
Exactly.
And the text uses such joyous, vibrant language to describe this original design. It says the universe was meant to be a place of jubilation.
Jubilation, yeah.
It calls it a universe of harmony that was supposed to be the basis for harmony within the domain of the eternal bond. It just paints a picture of this flawless, humming ecosystem of mutual love.
It sounds beautiful.
And there's always a system built entirely on perfect, continuous resonance has a massive vulnerability, doesn't it? What happens when one node in that network goes dark?
Which brings the entire architecture crashing down.
Yeah.
Because if we look out our windows today, that flawless ecosystem of jubilation is clearly not the world we inhabit.
Not even close. I mean, if the zero latency emotional internet was the blueprint, why is the world full of so much suffering and war and isolation?
Right.
How did we get from jubilation to where we are now? This leads us directly to the text's interpretation of what it calls the fall.
Yeah, and the concept of a fall isn't unique to this text, of course. I mean, many theological traditions have an origin story for human suffering.
Sure, yeah. Adam and Eve, Pandora's box.
Yeah, exactly. But the mechanics of it here are highly specific. The text describes the unthinkable fall, not merely as the breaking of a cosmic rule, like, eating an apple you were told not to eat, but as the total severing of that flow of Shimjung.
So the fiber optic cables of that emotional internet were just sliced right through.
To borrow your tech metaphor, yes, just slicing. But let's look at the biological consequence of that. Because of that severing, the prayer states that heaven, mankind, and creation all lost their
object, meaning
they lost the counterpart they were meant to resonate with. So everything entered what the text vividly calls a realm of lamentation.
Realm of lamentation. Wow. It is such heavy, grief-stricken language. And here's where it gets really interesting to me, because this is where my own assumptions were completely challenged.
Oh, how so?
Well, as I was reading this, I was struck by the text's depiction of God in the aftermath of this fall. In so many Western traditions I'm familiar with, when humanity disobeys or ruins the blueprint, the immediate divine reaction is wrath.
Oh, sure. Anger, punishment.
Exactly. It's a thunderstorm. It's lightning bolts, sending a flood to wipe the slate clean. But there is zero wrath in this prayer.
Yeah, the emotional tone is entirely different. It requires a complete recalibration of how one views divine authority.
I am actually struggling with the phrasing a bit, because the text describes a grieving figure, a heartbroken parent.
Yes.
The speaker of the prayer says that God's providence, his grand plan for the universe, was supposed to be glorious. But because of the fall, it changed.
Drastically.
The quote is that it became a deplorable providence of sadness and suffering.
Deplorable providence.
The phrase deplorable providence feels like a massive oxymoron to me. You don't expect a divine, omnipotent plan to be described as deplorable.
Right.
And then it says, our Father who had to tread such a providence. Why is the text using the language of compassion and victimhood for a creator who just had his entire cosmic blueprint ruined? If God is omnipotent, why doesn't he just, snap his fingers and fix the cables?
That is the crucial question.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is because, according to the logic of Shimjung, true resonance cannot be forced.
Ah.
Love, by definition in this framework, requires voluntary participation from an object. You simply cannot mandate a genuine relationship.
It wouldn't be love if it was forced.
Exactly. So when humanity, the intended object of God's love, disconnected, God was left with all this profound, expansive love and literally nowhere for it to land.
Wow.
He became a parent whose child has vanished. And this shifts the nature of guilt within this theology completely.
How so?
Well, in the prayer, the speaker expresses a crushing sense of guilt, saying, we became the motivation and cause of such a providence.
Meaning humanity is the reason God is trapped in this deplorable situation.
Yeah.
So the guilt isn't just, I broke a rule and now I have a stain on my soul. The guilt is, I broke a rule and now I've trapped my creator in an agonizing state of perpetual grief.
Precisely. They speak of needing to repent for historic guilt and the guilt of the era. This completely flips the traditional script of salvation.
It really does.
In many traditions, humans repent primarily to save themselves from hell or to achieve, personal enlightenment. Here, the primary driver of repentance is to comfort a grieving creator.
That's fascinating.
It is an attempt to rescue God from the sadness that humanity's fall forced him to endure. The ultimate goal is to release the divine from that deplorable situation.
That reframes the entire human experience. It's essentially saying we broke God's heart and we are the only ones who can heal it.
That's a great way to put it.
So you have a grieving creator and a trapped humanity. If humanity isn't just seeking personal salvation, but is actually tasked with a cosmic rescue mission, how does this text say a broken human can possibly fix a broken God?
Well, that introduces the concept of restoration. The text makes it clear that God did not simply scrap the project and start over.
No flood to wipe the slate clean.
No. The prayer states that God's history is not one of discarding sinful mankind. Instead, God has, up until now, held on to this dead world in order to establish and recreate the lost ideal of creation.
Held on to this dead world. The visual of that is just striking. A deity refusing to let go of an unresponsive offline network.
It's very poignant.
But when you look at the roadmap for this restoration in the text, the scale of the fix is absolutely staggering. It is not just about an individual making peace with God.
Not at all.
The text says we must establish the Shimjung bond at the level of ourselves, then our families, then the tribe, the nation, the world, and ultimately the cosmos. It expands outward like ripples in a pond.
Yeah, perhaps a better way to look at it, stepping away from the technology metaphor, is to view it as a biological or cellular model of healing.
Okay, I'm following.
You cannot have a restored, healthy cosmos if the constituent nations are diseased.
Right.
You cannot have a healthy nation if the families making it up are broken.
Yeah.
And you cannot have a restored family if the individual at the core is fundamentally misaligned.
It all builds on itself.
It's a fractal model of salvation. The healing has to start at the microscopic level, the individual heart, and compound upwards.
That makes a lot of sense. Like a single healthy cell dividing, repairing the tissue, which repairs the organ, which eventually heals the entire body.
And to initiate that cellular repair, the text specifically invokes the Shimjung of the Trinity as the mechanism to undo the grief and sorrow of restoration and to reconnect the fallen bond.
The Trinity.
Yes, but keep in mind, in the context of this specific theology, Trinity doesn't necessarily carry the traditional Orthodox Christian definition.
Right, it's different here.
It often refers to God, a restored man and a restored woman coming together in perfect resonance to form a flawless base, a new, healthy cell from which the rest of the world can be rebuilt.
They are essentially trying to become the new root system for the universe.
Exactly.
And as part of that rebuilding process, there's this fascinating, highly specific demographic detail dropped right into the middle of this sweeping cosmic prayer.
Oh, the population statistics.
Yes, it mentions 3 billion pitiful people live on this earth. Historically, the global population hit roughly 3 billion around 1960.
Which anchors this incredibly vast, timeless-sounding theology right into the gritty reality of the mid-20th century.
It really grounds the cosmic stakes in a deeply immediate reality. The speaker isn't talking about abstract souls. He is looking out at the world, a world dealing with the Cold War, massive geopolitical divides, and immense suffering as it existed at that exact moment.
Yeah, he's looking at the reality right outside the door.
And look at how the text describes those 3 billion people. It says they are languishing on the miserable road of fate, but it doesn't just dismiss them as lost causes or non-believers.
That's a key point.
The prayer notes that within those 3 billion people, there are many religious groups and individuals who, while maybe not knowing the exact truth of Shimjung, are concentrating their pitiful hearts. It says they raise unknown altars, crying out, beating the ground.
The sheer empathy in that description is worth pausing on, I think. Crying out, beating the ground. The text recognizes a universal, desperate human hunger.
Yeah, a shared pain.
It acknowledges that all of humanity is feeling the phantom pain of this severed connection, even if they lack the specific theological vocabulary to name it as Shimjung.
Right.
People are raising altars to unknown gods, trying every spiritual and philosophical path available, because their spiritual DNA remembers that original hum of connection. And they are agonizing over the dead air.
I have to say, the imagery of beating the ground is visceral. It's frustration. It's the ultimate expression of feeling completely isolated and wanting anyone to hear you.
Absolutely.
But how does crying out and beating the ground actually splice the cables back together? What is the actual mechanism of action here? We have this beautiful theory of cellular repair and fractal salvation, but theories don't fix things. Plumbers do.
That's a very practical way to look at it.
Or in this case, the faithful gathered in that room. Who actually does the heavy lifting to restart the heart of the universe?
Well, The focus of the prayer deliberately shifts from the global scale, the 3 billion, to the very specific individuals present in the room that day. The faithful who are receiving this blessing.
Okay.
They are the ones volunteering to be the plumbers, to use your term.
But the language used to describe these followers is not glamorous. They aren't painted as triumphant kings or untouchable saints floating above the fray.
Far from it.
The prayer refers to them as lonely figures. It acknowledges that they face ruthless persecution and adverse winds. It calls the path they are walking a sorrowful fate. Yet the text points out that they do not flee from it. They kneel down and appeal to God anyway.
It's a heavy burden.
What exactly are they pledging to do? Because I have to admit, the text says they must have earnestness and fervent hearts. That sounds a little passive, like just care a lot and the universe will fix itself. Is that really the mechanism?
Oh, no, it is the opposite of passive. And this raises a crucial point about the nature of commitment within this worldview.
Okay, unpack that for me.
In this context, earnestness isn't merely wishing for a good outcome. It is an agonizing, active bearing of the world's grief. The speaker is asking God to bless these individuals because they are willing to bear the staggering weight of restoring that cosmic connection manually.
Manually restoring it.
Yes. They are pledging to offer everything that we have.
So they are stepping into the role of the ultimate shock absorbers for both humanity's historical sin and God's ongoing grief.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. The prayer specifically asks God to let them become sons and daughters who don't know how to yield or be defeated.
Wow.
Think about the sheer friction required to restart a stopped heart, or the energy needed to force a dead nervous system back online.
It takes immense force.
They are volunteering to walk into that adverse wind and endure the world's misunderstanding and the pain of the cosmos, to manually hold those severed ties of Shimjung together until they heal.
Sons and daughters who don't know how to yield. That is a pledge of absolute, unbreakable resolve. And that intense friction you mentioned really culminates in the final plea of the prayer.
Oh, the closing lines.
Yeah, it's a moment that caught me totally off guard because it completely reframes the whole endeavor. It's not a peaceful meditation asking for good vibes and inner calm. It is a highly strategic, urgent plea for protection.
It is.
I want to read the final line exactly as it appears. The speaker says, "Please make this time one which Satan cannot take advantage of at all."
That single line fundamentally changes the atmosphere of the text, doesn't it? From a sorrowful lament into an active battlefield briefing.
It really does. It underscores that this quest for love, this attempt to restore Shimjung, is happening against a backdrop of active spiritual warfare.
Yes.
There is an adversary. The cosmic network didn't just crash because of a random glitch. There is an opposing force actively trying to keep the servers offline.
Exactly. And if we connect this back to the ruthless persecution mentioned earlier, it explains why the path of the faithful is so incredibly arduous.
Because it's a fight.
Right. In this worldview, the followers aren't just facing societal misunderstanding or bad luck. They believe they are facing coordinated spiritual opposition. Satan is presented as an opportunistic, strategic force, waiting in the wings to exploit any weakness, any moment of doubt, or any lack of that earnestness we discussed.
Which is why they cannot afford to yield. The stakes are quite literally absolute. It is a battle for the emotional and spiritual architecture of the universe.
It is.
So just to recap the sweeping journey we've taken today through this single document we started by looking at the original blueprint of Shimjung. That flawless, dynamic triad of love connecting God, humanity, and creation in total, joyous harmony.
The zero latency network.
Right. Then we explored the catastrophic heartbreak of the fall, which didn't just doom humanity, but plunged a grieving creator into a deplorable realm of lamentation.
The severed connection.
And finally, we've unpacked the fractal, cosmos-spanning effort required to restore that ultimate bond, carried on the shoulders of followers who pledged to weather severe spiritual warfare to rebuild the world cell by cell.
It is a vast, incredibly intricate theological framework, and it demands a lot from its adherents. But, I think there's a core element hidden inside this text that completely transcends the specific theology.
What's that?
Well, I'd like to leave you with a thought to mull over. Even if you step entirely outside the religious framework of this prayer, isn't the fundamental concept of a lost Shimjung profoundly relatable today?
I mean, definitely.
Consider our modern world. We live in a hyper-connected digital age. We have more avenues for instant communication than at any point in the history of our species.
We're constantly online.
Constantly. Yet, Sociologists and psychologists consistently tell us we are experiencing record high levels of loneliness and isolation. We have built the ultimate infrastructure of connection, but we are entirely missing the resonance.
Wow, yeah.
So are we all, in our own secular ways, wandering the earth, searching for that exact same depth of resonance with the feelings of others?
That's a powerful question.
Could our modern, very secular quest for empathy and authentic connection actually be an echo of this ancient desire to restore a severed universal bond?
Yeah.
Beneath all our technology, are we all just beating the ground, desperately looking for Shimjung?
That is definitely something to think about the next time you send a text into the void. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.